Finding, keeping, and retaining top talent is always a challenge. But what if your benefits strategy could do more than just reduce costs? What if it became your real growth engine? Now, in this episode, we're going to explore how smart, scalable systems like advocacy, telehealth, and employee empowerment can unlock productivity, boost retention, and protect your bottom line.
Welcome to Fortify Live with your host, Saeks.
Now, joining me in today's episode is Reid Rasmussen. He's the co-founder and CEO of Freshbenies, a platform that helps business leaders transform healthcare benefits from, a cost center into a strategic asset. Now, with over a decade of experience leading a fully remote team, which I want to learn more about that, building a values-driven culture and running a leadership development in-house, Reid's insights go far beyond just benefits, and that's why he's part of the show today. Now, we're going to be talking about how you create sustainable, people-powered business growth. So, Reid, welcome to the show. Happy New Year. And so tell me, why did you get started in this? I mean, when you think about, your company and rethinking one of the most painful parts of business, which is benefits, right, and you turned it into a growth strategy. Because for me as a company, I've had 17 different companies. I've had thousands of employees over the years, over my career. And every time I write those benefit checks, I know I need to do it, but it's like, ugh. So I can't wait to have this conversation.
Yeah. Well, for the great founder story, which is always one of my favorite things to ever ask another entrepreneur, is like, okay, how'd you get into this? For me, originally I'm from Canada. And my degree in Canada was health administration, which there means you're working for a hospital or the government. And I worked for each for a couple of years. But then I skipped the border in 1991 and I came to the US and I ended up on the insurance side of things here. And there was some ideas in 2009, if you remember where we were, the economy was tanking. Benefit costs were getting higher and higher. And if you even remember, even then, our out-of-pocket costs were starting to get higher. We as a benefits industry were starting to talk about consumerism plans, which meant you have higher out-of-pocket costs, and it's trying to get employees to think like a consumer. But really what we were concerned about at the time was we weren't putting in tools to help people. Everybody had insurance, or all those people had insurance, but they didn't have a good way to get around the insurance industry. And there weren't good tools for people, or there were for jumbo-sized groups at that time, but not for, employers, normal employers with 1,000 employees or 100 or 10. And so our goal was to start Freshbenies as a fresh approach to benefits, to bring those tools, to be a collector of these various cost containment tools or these various consumerism tools, and help them actually get used inside an employer's plan so that you'd change the culture of how your people were actually engaging with healthcare, rather than just tossing a higher out-of-pocket cost at them and hoping that it would reduce your employee benefit costs overall. And so it was taking a very different look at the industry than what I had had for all those other years working in the health insurance industry. And it really, I mentioned the part about coming from Canada. It was some lessons that I'd learned from working in Canada that had really prompted it. And in 2009, I was arrogant enough to think because that I have an idea that others haven't solved for. And I jumped off and started the company, and we had seen telehealth for the first time then. I thought in 2009 I was late to the telehealth industry. I wasn't even close to late to the telehealth industry. Right. We've used tools like that for many, many years and served thousands of clients. And it took us a while to get our core client story in focus. But when we did, we tripled 4 years in a row. It put us on the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing company list 4 years in a row as well. And we built a company, and here it is 16 years later. And we've lost ground because the system is more complicated than it ever was. And we're back this year to, on average, this year, everybody's rate increases were double digit again. So on health insurance, we're, like I say, we're losing ground.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I mean, so we're live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram, and a few other places. Not live on Instagram, but promoted through Instagram, and definitely YouTube and LinkedIn. And as a business owner myself, and we've got people that are business owners, entrepreneurs, franchisees, franchisors, private equity
Yeah.
groups. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about business, right? And so, you know, who is your sweet spot for your client? So we're going to be looking at this through the marketing eyes, but we're also going to talk about, the problems you solve, but who's your sweet spot client that you're really looking to work with?
Our sweetest spot clients are between 50 employees and 1,000 employees, and not just the employers, but the brokers and consultants who serve them, because almost every employer in that category, every employer in that category, you've got a health insurance broker who is your go-to to the person you're looking to as that trusted advisor and asking, what are the good ideas out there and how do they fit in context of all of the rest of this? And so for us, that's our sweetest spot. We tend to usually market to the health insurance brokers, which is where you and I met.
Yep, at UBA.
Yeah, that's right, at a conference where they were trying to figure out how to work as better business people, right?
Yeah,
did a great talk on AI and how to have better leadership, right?
Well, and that's really the key. I mean, the biggest thing, and for our listeners here, if you're in business, you've got to offer some sort of benefits, and if you're, an employee, you're always looking for more benefits. I mean, for me, I've got a smaller staff; they're all remote right now. In the past, I've had hundreds of employees at different companies. When I had a manufacturing and sporting goods company, and I was in automotive and healthcare and child services. And so, for me, I've always felt like most leaders treat benefits like a necessary evil. How can, and so for me, like when I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we're not endorsing any one company, everybody on today's episode, I'm just giving you what I use, right? So I have an insurance broker, and I recently moved to Las Vegas, and so now I've got Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas, where my company was located, and now I can't even move, and I'm grandfathered in, so I had to keep a location in Kansas just so I can offer health insurance benefits to my team, which I know there's probably ways around that, which we don't have to solve on today's call, but it's like, okay, so I ran into that, and then the premiums have tripled because our average staff member now is older than it was when I had a couple younger staff members. So automatically my premiums doubled. So, and you've heard all the horror stories being in this business for so many years, but how can reframing benefits, how can reframing that unlock, real operational leverage and growth? Like how does an organization really look to benefits as an asset and not just something that they have to painfully do when they write the checks? I care about my employees, but it takes so much revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. In a lot of companies, it's the third biggest revenue line item you have is the employee benefits that you're paying. It's significant. And I'll answer it by telling a couple of client stories.
Yeah, please.
The first one is Tammy. She's an HR director of an engineering company out in Colorado. And, she got into HR because she loved helping people and she wanted to serve them and help in their development. A few years ago, she was getting frustrated because here she was spending about a third of all of her time just dealing with complaints over benefits. Every week, somebody was in her office like, hey, this doesn't even cover what it used to, or this emergency room visit that I was in on that was kind of a normal thing cost me $1,700. And so people were saying, you tell me I have benefits, but it's not very beneficial. And it's engineers, right? She had this one engineer, Clive, who he'd stop by every renewal season with a spreadsheet to prove how much worse things were getting. And she just hated it because he was correct,
I think he worked for me for a while.
Right? Yeah. He showed up with his math and a couple of years ago and says, even after paying his premiums, for his family, he was spending $4,800 in out-of-pocket costs. And he's like, how's that supposed to be insurance? And so a couple of years ago, she said to her broker, she goes, okay, you've been pushing me on some of these new ideas on how we need to rebalance this and not just look to the health insurance plan to solve it all. And she goes, okay. So she agreed to add in a few Freshbenies services. And she specifically liked the advocacy, which was a whole team of ours to help people navigate around the healthcare industry better so that she didn't have to try to be that advocate for them. And secondly was a behavioral telehealth program that we have that has unlimited zero visit fees for behavioral telehealth. And so here it is. It's 2 years later, and she just laughs at how different it is. This year, the company faced another 9% rate increase on their medical plan, but she's really glad she took the broker's advice, and she says, every week I've got somebody stopping me in the halls talking about something to do with their benefits. She goes, I can't believe how many times it's the Freshbenies. Like, we're paying this huge amount for health insurance, this small amount for Freshbenies, but it's actually affecting people's the way they're interacting, and they're feeling a lot more empowered. And so it's got her saving so much more of her time, not having to fight with these complaints. Her CFO's happy because their savings on the health insurance have far outpaced the cost of the Freshbenies, because that's the kind of healthcare plan they had. And even Clive, last week, I heard the story that even last week he was just bragging about skipping a trip to the urgent care center for his kid's ear infection, and the free amoxicillin that he got at the pharmacy afterwards. And he's an engineer, so he told her exactly how much he saved on that. It saved him $192, and to him that was a huge boom and a benefit, and like something worthy of talking to her about.
So is this something? So humor me, and for those of you listening, yes, I do my research on my guests, but this is a different topic. So I'm gonna ask this question. Okay, so in my business, I've got remote employees. It's a smaller staff, and so we have Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have Aflac, which was a supplemental thing, right? So it gives them supplemental insurance. Is Freshbenies another and, not an or, where they can engage in Freshbenies and they get different services? Or is it something that they have to go through a broker? Kind of give me the dynamics of the customer experience.
I like the way you asked that question. It's not an or. It's not a replacement for your health insurance.
Right. It's an and.
It's an and. But what it does is think of it as a set of tools that make sure that your employees are maximizing the use of their health insurance better.
Got it.
So at a time when you're rising and rising out of pocket costs, and it's going higher and higher and higher, it comes in as a low cost supplement alongside that when you're rebalancing those benefits. And because of the kinds of things that we have different sets of benefits depending depending upon what the employer is looking to do and what they're looking to rebalance. And it'll sort of help you make some of those other changes that you have to make, because the rates just keep going up, and an employer can't just keep paying for it all, but an employee can't pay for it all either. So you rebalance a little bit. And Freshbenies tends to come right alongside that health insurance plan. And typically, most of our clients, they have a good health insurance plan, and they're bringing this to come in alongside it to help it run better.
And it also helps your employees, because that reduces turnover, increases retention, adds more value. I mean, that's really, when someone's interested in coming to work for a company, that's one of the things that they're, I've lost a couple times because I don't have hundreds of employees anymore. And so it's harder to offer that same. So that's why I was grandfathered in. And so now, does your process have telehealth options, or how does that work?
Yeah, we've got a whole suite of different telehealth options. We have 4 different types of telehealth. Behavioral telehealth is one of the most common, but we've got a few different ones that we can pull on. We've got the advocacy services. We've got a pharmacy program that, if you include it, it's got $0 cost to the member for 95% of the top 200 most prescribed meds. So like these different things would be, they're different for different employers. And so it's always worthy of a conversation to just say, here's, what are you looking to do? And our package pricing goes from like $3 to $25, depending upon which modules you might include.
Well, that's pretty cool. So now we're going to shift gears for a little bit. You've scaled this remote team long before it was trendy.
Yes.
How have strong systems and values helped you grow without sacrificing agility and control? Because I mean, we all know we went through the C word, which I'm not going to use. COVID was the word, right?
Yeah.
So obviously I have a remote team now, and I resisted it for years because when I came back from the pandemic and everything, I had employees that didn't want to come back into the office, and I'm an old school. Hey, everybody needs to come into the office, so I made them come into the office, and I lost a couple employees. And when I had the exit interviews, they're like, "Well, I got another full-time job." So then I was really kind of frustrated. I could use a different word. I was literally kind of upset because they were supposed to be working full-time for me, but because they were remote, they were working 2 full-time jobs, right? They were basically giving me 50% and them 50%, but charging me 100%. And so that was definitely not happy.
Cool.
So going to remote, how do you make sure that you're not just sacrificing agility and control and you're actually getting performance?
We started our company in 2009. So there were things that hit that were just the perfect timing. The cloud started to be good and secure. And so we could have remote files, and then systems were getting built that served well remotely like that. And I had been in sales, and I would always go at my inconvenience and my prospects' convenience. My intent was always, I was never inviting clients into my office. I was going out to see clients at their office. And so with that salesperson mentality, and because when we started our company, although I started here in Dallas, Texas, we were serving the whole country because there was there was no reason from state to state that Freshbenies couldn't sell in every state. So we went where our prospects were. And by going, I initially started to use video conferencing in 2010, mostly to try to disqualify prospects, to figure out at a distance so I wasn't flying across the country all the time just to find out in 15 minutes of sitting there to go, oh gosh, these guys aren't even close to ready for our product. Right. So my idea was, gosh, we can at least disqualify people or pre-qualify remotely. And we started to see, gosh, people were actually just getting comfortable with this. And so we built our company as we started to add employees. Beyond just my wife and I, she was the first employee who came on 2.5 years in, and then we started to add other employees. And we specifically, at the time, thought it would be a real advantage to be able to recruit people who were smart and good, but weren't going to go into an office when everybody else was going into an office. So when COVID hit, we thought we were pretty arrogant. I was pretty arrogant about it in March and April of 2020. Like, okay, we got this remote thing figured out. But, a couple things. We recruited differently over the years based upon who we hired and how we managed them right from the get-go, because we knew they were going to be remote. And one of the biggest challenges that most other companies had was their systems and processes and their management style wasn't built for remote work. And so they're trying to put the same command and control rules in place. And those are the companies that are tracking clicks and how much uptime people have on their laptop. Instead of figuring out what you need to do is you need to know how much work should be able to be done, manage towards expectations and goals rather than tasks and how many hours somebody's sitting in a chair. And so that was some of the big ones for us. Along the way, we knew we really wanted every employee to be far more of a leader and to be in tune with the other things that were going on inside the company, which is much tougher when you're remote. And so we got extra. I'd say one of our big pushes was we worked extra hard to be open and transparent about our financials, how money was made in our business, what were good actions, what were bad actions, what our goals were as a team and how they all fit together. And so we had to over communicate on those things. But what it did was it built better leaders inside our team. Therefore, we had people who could tell, oh, if I make this, it's actually going to affect something in IT, or it's going to affect something with the client service team, and that's not going to be good for our clients, so I'm not going to do that. And so the team was really looking out for each other more. And what we built was a whole team of leaders. And it's one of those things that it's easy to say,
Right.
but you can tell the difference in a culture where it's actually really true.
No, I would agree 100%. I mean, for me, it's always been, if you hire right, people, and I do a lot of keynotes and presentations on leadership and business growth and sales and marketing and all these different
Right people in
topics.
the right seats, man.
But hire slow and fire fast. And I've made the mistake more times than I can count, millions of dollars worth of mistakes, where I hired fast, fired slow, and because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in personal growth, I'm like, you can do it. And then I'm like, that dog doesn't hunt, and I have to free them up for new opportunities. But I think what you said was really good for our listeners and viewers. Is whatever organization you're in right now, leveraging the power of virtual is certainly an asset, but you really do need to approach it differently. You can't approach it the same way you did traditionally with your in-house office. So I think that's a key point. The second thing is conditions of satisfaction. I know for me, what's helped me is, what does success look like? And
Yes.
so, and how are we going to measure that? And also putting that responsibility on that team member. Obviously, every business is different. Every role is different. And, if you're in retail, you're not going to have virtual employees necessarily. Although I have seen it where they're set up kiosks now and there's virtual employees, but we won't go down that road yet. But conditions of satisfactions, measurement tools, great communication, transparency, and really creating that culture. And if you think about, success in business, there's a lot of different buckets, right? You've got the culture bucket. What are our goals, mission, vision, and values? What do we stand for? What does success look like? And then you've got leadership. How do you lead that? What's our vision? Where are we going? Then you've got management. How are we going to actually execute and get it done and track it? And then you've got team building, where you have to make sure you have communication in place. And then, of course, you've got to have policies in place for what's acceptable behavior and what's not. And that way, the systems are managing themselves. You're not managing them. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. In that, most companies will talk about setting values for your company, but they're not really the values of your company if you're not doing what you just said, and that is, are you hiring based upon them? Right. But even more importantly, are you firing based upon them as well? I always used to think that at the big companies that I worked for prior to starting my company, companies just get too big and values can't be used to manage. But my COO was, she was with Amazon for about 6 years. And one of the most amazing things that I heard about the way she worked is that at Amazon, virtually every day they're making decisions as team members based upon the values. And somebody's saying, well, because this is our value, we need to turn left on this rather than right. And I was blown away by that. And so we really defined our values. Everybody on our team can tell you what they are. They spell fresh, which took a little bit of a word.
Right. Your acronym fresh. Yeah.
We're fresh. We're right thing doers. We're educated innovators. We are servant leaders, and we are heroes. Heroes of the cause. And we bring that up. We bring it up in our reviews. We bring it up in our hiring. We've literally made hiring decisions saying, yeah, these two people are good, but this one's not fun. And she is going to be a drain. And this one over here, she's a kick. I could see happily working with her every single day. So it plays out in the hiring and it plays out in the firing as well. And it's vital. If you're not, the people say the culture of your company is what you're willing to put up with, right?
Yeah, and it's so interesting. So I've done a lot of strategic planning sessions and facilitated executive board meetings and roundtables. And so, and of course, I've got some of the top leadership, even though I speak on leadership, I've got some of the top leadership experts in the world are clients. And I've had the opportunity to work with them. And when you spend that much time and you see the vision with them, I learned, I'm an entrepreneur member, EO member, right? So I'm an EO member. And so, years and years and years ago, it was probably 20 years ago, I was at one of my EO meetings and I was just complaining about the employees. And, it was the typical employer, can't find good people. They're right. They want to be on, their computers or their phones all day and not really working, blah, blah, blah. And So I had a lot of turnover, and one of the guys said, "So how many businesses have you had?" And I've had 17, and I've done this, and he goes, "Yeah, I know, Ford. I've been around you for a couple of years." He said, "Have you always had turnover issues?" And I said, "Yeah, I seem like I just can't find good people." And he said to me, he said, "What's the one common denominator? Who's always at the scene of the crime?" Is exactly the words he said. He said, "Look, we need to look at this." And so he started asking me questions about my communication style. And of course, I'm an entrepreneur. On the disc profile, I'm a high D and a high I. And so he started to explain the dynamics and how, and I've known about the personality styles forever. Been back in the days of corporate world and stuff. So, but he really helped me realize, and he said, "Okay, let's create a plan here to restructure it." And that's when we actually came up. I'm going to switch screens for a second and hold this up to the camera. Whoops, wrong button. Let me put the other button up. Okay. So on the screen, we have mouse pads that have our working standards on it. And I don't expect everybody to be able to read it from there. If you're watching the replay, you could freeze the screen and read it. But it really has working standards. So it has our vision, it has our mission, it has our values. Although then when I showed it to my leadership mentor, he's like, "You've got too many values," because I had integrity, creativity, honesty, trust, respect, kindness, coachable, contribution, open-minded, collaboration, excellence, and accountability. He said, "That's too much. You need to pick 3, and everybody on your team needs to be able to communicate what the values are." And so then, even though it's still on the mouse pad, everybody, because I didn't want to reprint the mouse pads, but so we went back and we said, "Okay, let's keep this simple. How can we do this in a way that people can articulate?" And so we came up with 3, and it's not really values, but it's kind of it's happy clients. We want our clients to, we want to deliver value to our clients. We want a happy team because we want to make sure that they're cohesive and productive. And we want a happy bank account. And it needs to fit all 3. If you just have a happy bank account, maybe your team's upset and you're not helping your clients. Or if you're helping your clients and you're losing money, well, then you're not, or if your team is stressed out. So it was really keep it simple. Happy team, happy clients, happy bank account. And so then that help. I mean, that's the lens that we look through. And then of course there are specific metrics, but beneath that.
Yeah. And what you're saying and what you did there matches what Disney did as well. I was amazed when we took our team to the Disney Institute for some training there on how do you hire like a teenager and teach them your values quick enough that when they're cleaning Main Street USA, they actually know your values and they know what the priority of the next thing that they should be working on is based upon what you trained them on the values. One, it had to be simple, but you had to also point them in, this is how you make decisions on what work to do. And that's amazing leadership. But it's also why you walk into a Disney and you're like, nobody does it as well as these guys do.
No, I agree. Well, what are some of the challenges that surprised you along the way that, you thought you were going right and you had to turn left? Like what's something you had to overcome and how did you overcome it?
Well, I was always very excited that the section of the healthcare benefits industry, which is so dull and so monolithic that you don't make fast changes in the employee benefit space, especially where I'd been working in health insurance for most of my career. So all of a sudden I was looking for the cool, innovative ideas.
Right.
And you want to be working on that if you're my kind of personality. But one of the things that was interesting was we saw the growth and the rise of some of those and got to live off of the rapid growth of telehealth at some phases and at some of these different tools. And then you hit a point where it becomes more mainstream. And so there's a lot of different places that you can go for it. And as much as you theoretically can say, oh yeah, of course that's going to happen, you'll have a great rise when it's just you in the space. And you'll ride that rapid growth. And then you'll hit this point where all of a sudden people can go anywhere for a lot of these things. Like telehealth is included inside virtually every medical plan these days. So people say, well, why would we ever come to you for it? And the answer is, well, for the other stuff, And so we had to change. And so some of our shifts in the amount that we were growing was because we chose to be in an innovative sector. But what it meant was we always had to be looking for what that next innovation is going to be, so that you've got a next rise. So because you go up to a plateau, and then you'll grow a bit, and then you'll reach a plateau on that product. But if you've got a few different product lines that you're working with, there's always some new next innovation, and you have to sift through a number to find them. And all of this, anybody who's on here is like, yeah, of course, Reed, that's what you do. What's the surprise about it? The surprise is when it's really your own business and you're in the middle of it and you play through that. So that was one of our biggest challenges, was fighting with the life cycle of innovations.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's always been, adapt, don't just adopt. There's a lot of advice out there, but you have to adapt it to what works. And the marketplace votes with their dollars. And so you can hire I'm a high paid consultant. You can hire me. At the end of the day, though, it's the marketplace votes with their dollars. And even when I create a campaign for a company through my agency, because I have an agency called Prime Concepts, we're always looking at performance metrics. What's your baseline metrics? How much does it cost you to reach your target market? What's your conversion rate? What's your, cost to acquire a new customer? What's the lifetime value? We're looking at metrics, and we're letting the numbers help make the decision. So we use the emotional and the insight and the innovation side, but we also use the numbers side to make sure that it's a sound business practice. And there are a lot of times on paper where it doesn't seem like a good idea to zigzag, but if you test, and then if you do a small test, I always say start simple, get complicated later, do a small test and see what works. Because I've done things where I thought would really be successful and they bombed. And I've got things that I thought would never work, and it's been a huge success. So you want to use your instinct and your experience to limit the downside of any decision-making process you have, including healthcare benefits or anything else in your business. But at the same time, you have to test. And I found that really does help. Test, track, modify, and repeat. Do a test, track the results, make one small modification, repeat the test, and see if you can continue. And I like that your company was able to, shift, especially because you're in a highly overregulated, complicated industry. Like if I opened up, ChatGPT or something to figure out what business I'd start, I don't think employee benefits would be the sandbox I'd play in. So I really want to compliment you for navigating that for the last, 16 years.
Yeah. And along that, with those innovations, if we're going to launch a product, we have to build out tech. For us, we don't launch a product and then just test it for a couple clients and then close it. So for us, because the barrier to entry was big if we're going to get something launched. So one thing that has been really helpful, we have an advisory group of some of our health insurance brokers and consultants that we talk to.
Yep.
And so we're checking in with them a couple times a year. And I got a group who on purpose are geographically in different types of business that they serve, and men and women and younger and older. And I got some that used to sell us and no longer do. And they're on our advisory group as well as those who are fans, because I need to know what they all think, and we'll take ideas to them. And we found if we just take an idea to them, they'll always say, oh, that's a good idea. But really what we'll typically do now is bring 3 ideas and say, which of these would you put first? Because although they're not, my mother-in-law is in real estate, and she says buyers are liars. Like they'll all say this is what they want, but it's not what they'll actually buy for a house, right? So if we just asked them, hey, is this a good idea? They'd say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll sell that. Or my clients would pay for that. And then you give them a few options instead, and they go, oh, yeah, this one's important, far more important than this one. And that answers it right there for us.
Well, I hope you guys are writing down the gold, because that strategy is something that is used in business and marketing. And which one of these you think is best is a great way for them to self-select, because, in marketing and sales, it's just giving people enough information they can make good decisions, and you can influence. And so when you're actually looking to get real feedback, having those choices and giving people, setting up the questions in that manner does help you tremendously. I know for me, when I had a pre-event questionnaire to go speak at a conference like I did when I met you at UBA, I'm going to ask them, what are the three things that are most important to you? Or I'm going to say, of these three topics, which one do you feel is most important? That way they can pick. And then even though I know what they're probably going to pick, it helps the conversation. All right. So as we wrap up, think about this episode, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to a business owner who wants to future-proof their team and reduce risk, especially as it relates to benefits, as they grow? So what's a takeaway? They've listened to this. Maybe they've already got a program in place, but they're interested in making it better.
Okay. I told you I had two client stories.
Yeah,
so I started.
Tell me the stories. This is my show. We can go as long as we want. Keep going. Tell me the stories.
The other story is a little bit on the different side of the spectrum, in that I know you got a lot of franchises that are clients and listeners of your podcast here, and guests on your podcast. The last couple have been franchise owners. So one of the issues with franchises is the way health insurance works. It's tough as a national franchise organization to put in health insurance that's going to work for all your different entities, because there's all these different locations and ownerships.
100%.
So traditional health insurance becomes difficult for a benefit program. And this particular client that I'll talk about, they're a set of restaurants. So we've done programs for franchises at the national level and then at the local level. This particular story happens at the local level. Here in North Texas, there was a set of 55 Taco Bell franchises. And I was talking with the owner who was in a mastermind group with me. And his challenge was he had over 100% turnover of employees. And he said, this is a real challenge. And I go, so it's not equal turnover. When does the turnover actually occur? Is it like in the beginning? Is it a couple years in? Or is it your longer term employees? And he said, no, it's all within the first few months. And I said, what? I couldn't believe that was how fast it was. And he goes, yeah, effectively an employee comes here, and if they don't like their boss or the schedule or somebody else that they work with, they're just quickly out of there and they're heading across the street found out they could get 25 cents more across the street or whatever.
Yep, that's so common.
And I said, so when does an employee become a good employee? He goes, 2 years. And I was surprised he had an answer. And I go, why 2 years? And he goes, because it takes me 6 months to train up an employee. And after that, if I can get 1.5 years more good work out of them, that's awesome. And I was like, wow, I was amazed to hear that. And I say, so what do you do for them when they reach that 2-year level? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, what do they get for benefits? And he goes, I'm not allowed to give them benefits. Because this is the kind of thinking that you get inside a franchise. Because the insurance people have told you can't just give insurance to somebody just at that point, right? And I go, well, what would you invest in him? And he goes, man, I'd give him anything at that point. And I go, but you don't give him anything? And he goes, no. And so we came up with a set of benefits of ours, which are, they're officially, all of our tools are non-insurance benefits. So you as an employer can define when you're going to give them. And so we put together a program that was in at around $10 per employee per month. And I said, so maybe at that 2-year level, you give it to them for all those employees, because you said you're willing to invest a little bit in them. And he goes, $10, that's less than lunch.
Right.
It's so small. And I said, well, what do you think? Do you start it at the 2-year level? And he goes, no, actually, I want to start it at the 6-month level. So he was willing to invest in his people differently. He was just looking for a different tool than what had been handed to him before. And so it's a good example of where now they don't have health insurance, but when people come to them and they say, what do we get when we're going to come work for you? Well, you're going to get paid your money. You're going to get this kind of training. And by the way, after 6 months, you get to be involved in our benefit program. And here's what it actually has. And they've got something that they can brag about with a whole sector of employees who in the past, they've just had to mostly be a little bit embarrassed about and saying, no, we don't have benefits. And the only thing I'm going to do is pay you. And yeah, it might be 25 cents less than what they're going to pay you across the street. And so it was a whole different way to be able to help work on turnover, because man, that is expensive.
Yeah, for me, when I started in total and quick serve restaurants, QSRs, fast casual, full service dining. I mean, you're
Yeah.
dealing with entry level employees, and there is a lot of turnover. And the problem is they can go straight across the street, and so the commitment isn't there. And so I work with franchise brands to really help them create that culture that keeps the employees, not just because of the pay, because pay is a short term motivator, as we all know. Great story on that. I know, for me, I'm dealing with two things right now. One, I created benefits. I used to have a 90-day waiting period. I think I
Uh-huh.
changed it to 2 weeks or something because I couldn't get employees to start unless they had benefits. And then then I've been dealing with vacation pay, which is not something we're going to solve on this call. And I'm putting this at the end of the episode because maybe my team won't hear it, right? But my producer probably will, but it's okay. But it's like, as an employer, I have paid holidays. So I started paying all the paid holidays. So I do all the popular ones, Christmas and New Year's. And, there's like 7 holidays, Thanksgiving, Easter, whatever. And so I have like 7 paid holidays. But then someone said, well, we want our birthday off. So then they got their birthday off. And then it became, well, we did really good this year. Can we take off between Christmas Eve and New Year's? Well, then there's all these extra days. Well, because Christmas and New Year's fell on this day, well, now we might as well just take the extra. So I ended up getting another 2 weeks off, and so all that's money, and they don't realize that's lost opportunity cost. Now I've got a great team, and I love them, so I'm going to put that on the record on the episode here for the recording and replay. They're great, but it's like at some point, they need to understand that their pay is also all these other benefits that they're getting on top of that. And so now you said there was another story. You have one more?
That was the 2 that I had
Okay, you
thought
did.
about.
Yeah. Well, I might on the replay of this, not on the live broadcast, but on the replay, I'd like to tell that story first because that was really a good story. So I think that what would happen if that multi-unit franchisee gave benefits after 90 days? Like,
Right?
yeah.
Honestly, like his comment was so telling where he said, if he's thinking, his statement of, I don't have money for benefits was mostly colored by the fact that he had high turnover in the first few months.
Sure, of course. And then it's usually 60 days
And
or
his
less.
statement
Yeah.
was, if you're going to be with me for any amount of time and be a good employee, oh my gosh, I would do more for them. He just, it was such it told you what was important and where the challenge was on him investing in his people. It was for the ones who are going to be here with me, man. And I don't have the average medical plan in this country for employee benefits this year will cost $750 for a single employee. Like, he doesn't have $750, but he had a few cents per hour that if he had a way to provide a benefit for them, that he really could. It's just, if they haven't heard about that or didn't hear about it in today's world, they don't have a context for how to promote it because they think everything's all about the health insurance plan. And it's either a yes or a no,
Yeah, I think that's
It's a
fair. I think
different
there's
thing.
more options. I think business owners need to realize that there are options, like Freshbenies. And so, we've been listening to Reid Rasmussen. He's the CEO and co-founder of Freshbenies. You can check him out at freshbenies.com. Not beanies, everybody. Benefits like benefits, Freshbenies. So what's one piece of advice that you'd leave our listeners with to wrap up the show that you'd like to share?
I think all of us need to be educated innovators, and it is our responsibility to get educated. You mentioned the EO organization that you're a part of. I'm a part of Vistage. My co-CEO, who's my wife, is part of EO. We have a reading program and a mastermind program inside in our company. I believe books, podcasts like this are such a fantastic way to get educated. If you're not getting educated in today's world, it's your fault and you're the one falling behind, and it shouldn't be your employer whose responsibility it is to educate you. It's up to you. With that, I always have a favorite set of books that I'm reading. This year, my favorite book that I read was Stories That Stick.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that book, but if you don't,
I've got it
Ford,
right here
you'd love
behind
it.
me on my shelf.
I love it as a great way to learn to tell a story better. And the year before, my favorite book was
isn't that Kendra Hall? Stories That Stick?
It is.
Yeah, I know Kendra. Yeah.
Yeah. So educate.
So we're going to keep going. So what's a couple other books? I'm interested. So what else are you reading?
I read one called Humor, Seriously, this year that was very good on how humor helps in management and business and how to develop it. Let's see. I should have come.
No, it's okay. And everybody, we're doing this live. Like this was not a prepared question. So for me, the real outcome here, as we wrap this up, the real outcome, everybody, is what's in your success library. There's really no excuses anymore. Whether you're going to YouTube or some AI program like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or Copilot, or whether you're reading snippets of books. One of the things I'll do is when someone gives me a book like Stories That Stick, I might go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I know Kendra Hall. Give me the top 5 takeaways. Now, it's not a replacement, everybody, for doing the heavy lifting and reading the book. I think there's something very important about the way the brain works when you're reading and doing that. So I think that's an important. It's not an excuse not to read those books. But, between AI, YouTube, and of course there's Substack and Reddit, and you can, put conversations, but being active, I really think that as we wrap up, there's really no such thing as job security, only skills security. And when I tell organizations, if they want to attract and retain and keep their top talent, is they need to help them improve their skills and their training, which is why, training isn't something you did once. It's something that you do often. And that's why I love participating and having guests like you on the show on Fortify Live. So it's really been great today. It has.
Thank you for that. Though there was a name that I was looking for, and it was Arthur C. Brooks. Anything by Arthur C. Brooks right now I'm loving. He's a professor. He did a book called From Strength to Strength that talks about people who are getting to the portion of their lifespan where you and I are, where our creativity isn't at the same level that it used to be when we were younger. And therefore, are we shifting what our focus on adding value to others is? And how do we go from the strengths that we used to have to a new set of strengths? And I think from the session that I was in with you in September, you are clearly learning new things and figuring out how to educate people differently. And it's exactly what Arthur is referring to. So you're an inspiration.
Well, I know that, one thing I'll tell you is, the more I learn, the more I know there is to know, right? I mean, the scariest people to me are the ones who think they know everything and don't know what they don't know. So while I know a lot and I get paid, big fees, I'm also humble enough to know what I don't know. And I just learned a new author. So I'm going to go, I've never read any of his books or anything. So, I'll be doing that today.
He's our kind of people.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to Fortify Live. There's the clapping. So thanks for tuning in to Fortify Live, where we're all about accelerating your business growth. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, keep learning, and keep fortifying your success.
Thank you for tuning in to Fortify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.